Hello, and welcome back to Culture in Action. I'm Luke Fisher, CEO of Mo. Today I'm joined by not one, but two guests: Dan Kessler, who's the president of Energage and the famous at Top Workplaces Awards, and a familiar voice now on this podcast, and KK Byland, who's the Chief Human Resources Officer at American College of Education. They are a trailblazing organisation delivering affordable, accessible, and high quality higher education across the US. KK has a really unique role. She's been there for over a decade, scaled the HR function from a team of one, yes, just her, to a culture driving powerhouse that supports a fully remote workforce across more than 40 states in the US. In this episode, she shares this remarkable journey from building a HR department from scratch to embedding culture into every stage of the employee experience, all while staying true to ACE's mission of serving those who serve others. We explore how ACE has sustained a strong values-led culture through rapid growth and remote transformation, and how being a mission-driven B Corporation shows up in everyday moments, not just the headlines. If you're navigating through culture change in a growing, remote, or purpose-led organisation, maybe all three, this episode is definitely for you. Welcome back, everybody. I'm absolutely delighted to have two people here with me today. One is Dan, who's becoming quite a familiar voice, and the other is KK. So why not? Let's start with Dan, if you don't mind. Do you mind telling those that haven't listened to you yet a little bit about yourself?
Of course. I'm the president of Energage and proud partners with Luke and the team at Mo, and have been with the organization coming up on 15 years. And what many things that journey has afforded me, one of which is to really have the chance to work with and get to know a number of culture-focused leaders. What I'm really excited about is today we have truly one of the best. So KK, who is the CHRO at American College of Education, I will hand it over to you to share a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Dan, and thanks, Luke, for the opportunity. I'm KK Byland. As Dan mentioned, I'm the Chief Human Resources Officer at American College of Education. I have been with the organization, 10 and a half years now. I had the opportunity to start the HR department with the organization in 2015. I started my career actually in elementary education and early childhood. And quickly after I started teaching, I discovered something called HR. At that time, I didn't know much about even what that was. And I had a very negative experience in the workplace at the time, and I wanted to have an opportunity to change that experience. And so really piqued my interest into what HR is and what it could be. And so sometime after that, I went back to school, got my master's degree in human resource management, and thus a human resource leader was born.
Cool. So as the Brit in the virtual room that we're in here, Ace, the first time I heard about you, I have to confess, was when I started doing a little bit of research and we had our preparation call. But I assume that is more because I'm hidden over here in the UK rather than it is anything more. So would you tell us a little bit more about Ace and maybe what makes you unique? Because you seem like a really good best kept secret in the US.
We really are one of the best kept secrets in the country here in the United States. And American College of Education, we are a college that offers affordable, accessible, quality online programs for those serving us out in our community. So we really focus on programs for educators, business leaders, healthcare professionals. So we're reaching those teachers, those nurses, those leaders, and making sure that they have those master's degrees, those doctorate degrees at an affordable price point so that they're not graduating with boatloads of debt. 86% of our students are graduating debt-free, which means we're not contributing to the student loan crisis that we have here in the United States. And those individuals are going out into the communities and they're giving back what they've learned and instituting that into their respective positions. In fact, we had a recent study done internally by Lightcast that was able to show that for every dollar invested here at ACE, our students are getting $19 back on their investment. So when we say that we are committed to delivering affordable, accessible, high quality education for our learners, that proves it.
That's extraordinary.
Huh.
So, well, that is really extraordinary to learn more about ACE and the value that you all provide. When it gets to building the people strategy at ACE, you mentioned that it's been about 10 years and you joined as the HR team of one. So to kick us off, maybe take us back to those initial days and weeks and just sort of paint the picture of what you were walking into in those very, very early days.
I can tell you, um, the opportunity to sit down and have this conversation with you has been so exciting for me. It's given me the opportunity for the first time in 10 and a half years to really reflect on this journey. We start this, I think each of us in our respective roles, we start something and we just go to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. We don't often have this opportunity. And so this has been a wonderful exercise for me. But going into week one, month one, the first 6 months, honestly, the question I asked myself often was, what did I do? Like, what is happening? Everything was very fundamental. If you think of what it takes to start any department at any organization, that's what I had to start doing. So at ACE, our HR at the time was being outsourced by a sister company at the time. And so that company was much larger than we were. We were at the time about 90 employees. And so they were maybe handling our HR issues as a side job. We often joke that we were the stepchildren. I don't believe that to be true, but it was an internal joke for us. So I had to focus on employee files. How do I get them together? Make sure that we accounted for all of our employees. I had to focus on benefits. What did those look like? Because at the time we were integrated into benefits with said sister company. So when you truly think of what we needed to start a department, I was at ground zero. I had employee documents and things shipped from Dallas because that sister company was in Dallas. They were shipping me files on the daily. And I was just receiving packages and then I would sort and file and sort and file and that's what my life was for months, honestly, was getting the mail and trying to decipher what we had for each of the employees. So organization, putting processes in place, but alongside of that, and most importantly, I took time to get to know the organization and the people. So we had around 90 employees at the time, and I took the time to meet each one, get to know them, have them get to know me as a person, because what I really truly wanted in my heart of hearts was not just an HR department for ACE. I wanted them to know and feel that what we were setting up at ACE was an organization that was going to be set up to serve them, not just a department that was there to be transactional and serve the organization's needs. We wanted to be able to do those things, but also serve the people needs. And so I took great pride in learning people's names, learning their spouses' names, their kids' names, their pets' names. That was fundamentally important to me because I know, Luke, Dan, you work with HR professionals all the time, and HR gets a bad rap. When to this day, I tell people when they ask me what I do, I tell them I'm head of HR. You get that look, or it just gets silent, and all of a sudden there's tension between people. I didn't want that. I wanted people to see me as a person and not the HR lady. That's where I
Wow.
started.
Yeah. And so I've got this like vivid, almost like cartoon picture in my mind of like a stack as big as you can imagine of like employee files that are shipped and they get added to every single day. And then I've got all of these conversations, probably with an overwhelming level of learning and insight and hope, probably, for what the organization could become. And then I've got you occasionally going, oh God, right, what do I need to do? What are these foundational items that I need to start putting into place? Like, how do I prioritize these files, all of these conversations, and like, how do I just get started and moving in the right direction? Can you help us like understand where you were and how you started to prioritize, okay, these are the big building blocks that I'm going to work on, and these are the steps that I need to take?
Yeah, it was oftentimes hard to straddle and go between the two. Like, where do I start? But one of the first things that leadership asked me to do for that year, for that cycle, because I was hired in January, and so that is annual review time. And so they really wanted an evaluation of not just the performance management process, but the annual review cycle. Like, what do we need to be doing as opposed to what we're currently doing? And at the time, they were doing their annual evaluations in Excel spreadsheets. And then they were being turned in and just filed. So if you can imagine what that's like, that's just a check mark off of somebody's to-do list. That's not a real conversation. That's not true feedback. So what I did was I took the time when those were coming in, so they would be emailed to me by each leader. I took the time to read through every single one, every line. It gave me a really good opportunity to not only get to know the employees from a performance level, but also the leaders, how they lead, how they perceive their group, how they evaluate their group. And I learned very quickly that we need to pivot and we need to pivot quickly. So, you know, we totally did away with Excel and we completely did away with a rating system because we were so inconsistent. Some leaders were giving their teams all fives because they thought their people could do no wrong and they're all fabulous. And then we had some leaders that would give their teams all threes because it's impossible to be a five, right? And then there were some people that were just kind of all over the board. And fundamentally, we know that's not equitable. And also, that's not true evaluating of people. And so we shifted to more of a feedback on a quarterly basis model. But that took a lot of coaching, that took a lot of training. Our leaders needed to not only know how to give feedback, but also to receive feedback. So that's just one example of an area where we had to focus and pivot. So we had to just completely shift away from what we were doing. And that's still evolving. We've evolved that process a couple of times throughout the years. It's still a feedback process, but we have taken feedback from employees and said, what do you like about this? What don't you like about this? What do you want to see? How can we change it so that you get the most value out of your performance management that you need to be successful? So it's ever evolving. Nothing's ever perfect.
You've teed me up wonderfully in the theme of evolving for my next question, actually, which is when we spoke before, there's been a couple of like fairly major inflection points for the organization. Things like transitioning to remote fully. Now I think you're present in 40 different states. Like some of these big moments really reshape the organization. I just wondered if there's any reflections that you've got on like, what are these inflection points where you're like, okay, we have to change again. We're kind of starting from scratch again because something really material has changed and therefore we need to too.
Yeah. I think the most pivotal one was I can't do this alone anymore.
Yeah.
You know, so many of us HR professionals are units of one for so long. And my hat goes off to all of those leaders because that is a really tough thing to do. And I did that in a previous role prior to joining ACE. I hired an intern in 2016 at some point. I don't even remember the month. And that was really just to give me some breathing room on the constant administrative work and to give me the opportunity to do some of those things that you were mentioning on looking up and looking out and where should we be focused strategically and how do we continue to grow meaningfully while building in culture. And so that was one of the area. And I'm proud to say our intern is still with us today. She's no longer an intern. She has grown with us. She's had a few different roles within the HR department, but she's really helped build this engine. As we transition to fully remote shortly after that and being introduced into dozens of states, obviously we've got to look at how are we onboarding our employees while being remote. That's a huge inflection point because you think of what onboarding looks and feels like being face to face and being in front of people. How do we deliver the employee experience that we want to deliver, how do we do that remotely? How do we introduce ACE to candidates during the recruiting process and give them the feeling of ACE during an interview? All of those things are part of the employee experience, whether they get hired or not, but it starts there. And so we talked about that. But it's embedding our culture and the employee experience in all of the decisions we make. So there are two key components when we're at the table and we're making key decisions. And really it's, are we living out our values? And are we staying true to our culture? But then secondly is it true to the mission of our students? Are we still going to be able to serve the students in the way that we have promised them? And if that answer is yes to those, then we're doing what we said that we've promised. And so talking through those inflection points, those are the things that we have stayed true to through each of those. And so, I mentioned onboarding, but also we had an opportunity in, I want to say 2017 towards the latter part into 2018, where we took what was divided into like a faculty training department, and we created an organization-wide training and development department that served the entire organization. So we now have a fully in-house training and development department, which now is called organizational development and training, where we can do customized trainings. We strategically meet with our leaders and we say, what does your team need? How can we help develop them? We strategically help them with their performance management, with anything related to the employee experience, but we do that all in-house. So we don't have to spend what have since that time has been millions of dollars on training programs. And by the way, they also are responsible for keeping up with all of our compliance training. But all of that is in-house now. So we've been able to do that. That was part of being able to serve the broader organization as a remote population. Has that answered some of your question, Luke?
Yeah, I think so. You had a transition to remote, triggered some feeling-based questions, like when you haven't got proximity as a default, how do you make people feel like they're a part of the organization? Then another inflection point was one of ultimately the opportunity for leverage through developing your people and how you take and align kind of strategic direction with the inflection point and resource that appropriately. I think they're the main two.
The other thing I would say,
that feel like-
KK, that
Go on,
really
Dan.
stood out is through all of the growth and changes and challenges that you and the team have overcome, having that clarity and focus on, are we staying true to our values and our culture at that highest level? And are we staying true to our mission of serving students? And how that, I think that is absolutely something that we see of having that clarity at the kind of top level direction, values, mission, purpose can really, it doesn't necessarily, I don't want to say it makes it easier, but it provides just a level of clarity and focus that has clearly kind of helped you navigate all of those changes. The other thing, KK, that makes me think of as having this such a unique experience of being able to really scale an HR team as the organization is scaling and moving to a remote culture and hiring people all over the United States. One of the things that we know culture leaders talk a lot about is specifically around that sense of cohesion and connection. And you talked already about the onboarding experience and how that is so critical to that initial sense of connection and why you're there and why you joined ACE and what it means. Can you maybe share a little bit more about, as employees settle in, what are some of the other things that you all have really thought about in terms of maintaining that sense of cohesion and connection?
Yeah, for us, it's making sure our employees feel seen and heard, because in a remote organization, it's very, very easy to feel isolated. Even if you're a part of a department of 30, 80 people, you can still feel very isolated. And so we are very intentional about having our employees feel seen. So whether those connection points are with one-on-ones, with leaders or coaches or through our mentoring program that we have. We have a formal mentoring program where leaders are signed up to be part of it. And then if an employee wants to sign up, they get paired with a leader depending on the algorithm that's within the system. We also, for our new hires, every quarter we have what's called a new hire mixer, where all of the new hires that were hired that quarter, we get online in a forum just like this, and we get to know our new hires, and all of the executives are invited to that new hire mixer. And so we spend time with them in a remote setting, but they get to see our faces, they get to talk to us, ask us questions, we learn about them. But it's dedicated time specifically for our new hires. We also have fun, engaging, remote playtime, if you will. So we do March Madness. This fall, we'll do College Colors Days and celebrate college football, and we'll do a college football pick'em pool. We also do remote holiday parties where we'll get together during the holidays and we'll get online and we'll just do some fun holiday games, and we'll say, how do you celebrate the holidays? And it doesn't matter if it's Christmas, Kwanzaa, whatever holiday you celebrate, let us know and we'll celebrate you. So we find different opportunities throughout the year to come online in these forums and see people face to face and feel seen and feel connected. And not only do we do that organization wide, but our leaders make an intentional decision to do that with their individual teams as well. We maybe monthly or quarterly games, just like fun games where it's not so work focused. Doing things like that to ensure our employees feel connected and feel part of what we consider the ACE family is truly important and very intentional for us. I think the other part for us as well is we have a formal recognition program and we have an informal recognition program. So informally, we can go into our HRIS and anybody can give somebody a kudos or a high five or recognize somebody living out our core values or whatever they would like to do. And then formally, we have something called a celebrity where staff and faculty can recognize somebody consistently going above and beyond and made their work life significantly easier, as well as our students can nominate faculty that have made a significant impact on their student journey. And so those awards are given away. They're nominated all throughout the year, and then we award those at the end of every year. And so again, just those very intentional moments throughout the year to ensure that our employee experience doesn't look the same for everybody, and they can pop in and engage as much as they want to or not engage. But all of these are opportunities that they have available to them.
What?
It feels like,
Yeah,
sorry,
go ahead.
Dan, if I may, that you've got a really nice blend of consistency with variability and something that becomes personal. How's that happened? Like, is that, again, designed by intention in the employee experience, or is it a case that good leaders have kind of pulled you in a direction and then it's easy enough for the organization to jump on board?
Well, it's very intentional, I think, because at the end of the day, culture isn't about perks and it's not about what we give employees. Culture is about how our employees feel when they come to work. I think you've each heard about the Monday crazies or the Sunday, I don't know.
Sunday scaries.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know the term because I don't have them. I also make it a mission to ensure that our employees don't have them. That's a thing for me. So they don't have to love every day. I don't love every day that I work. Some days are much harder than others. But at the end of the day, and if we look at things holistically, we need to love what it is that we do and respect the people that we do it with. And along the way, we come away with some pretty darn good people that we've met, then I think we're winning.
And speaking of winning, maybe some of the evidence of what you all are doing right has been the various top workplaces accolades that you've racked up over the years. A national level for your industry, standing out in things like leadership, innovation, work-life balance, purpose and values, all of these things are what your employees are telling you, the things that you're doing extraordinarily well. Can you maybe just talk a little bit about what that recognition has meant for the organization, both kind of internally with the existing team and then externally as well?
I'd love to. This is so exciting. We're just so proud of this. Before we partnered with Energage, and Dan, I gotta say, everybody I have interacted with at Energage, like those are my people. I love that organization. That's a lot of fun. I think that's one of my favorite partnerships. But before that, we engaged with Best Places to Work in Indiana because our headquarters is in Indiana. And that was sort of like our grassroots validation that we were doing things right. And that was a wonderful validation, but it was a small sampling of our employees, right? It's our Indiana-based employees. So at some point we were like, gosh, we're in all of these states, and wouldn't it be nice if we got validation and really heard from the rest of the group how they think we're doing? And so that's when we started this partnership and really took a look at how we were doing nationally. And so since then, we have been a nationally ranked top workplace, and so proud of that. We're going for our 5th year. Our survey launches next month, knock on wood. And really what that's meant for us internally from a data perspective, I'll start there. So we all know the stats. Glassdoor released in recent years, I think maybe 2022 or 2023, that organizations that have a strong culture have a 72% better retention rate. Well, here at ACE, our regrettable turnover is currently at 2.72%. So we are retaining our employees. And I think fundamentally, that's an excellent data point that can serve us well. Our friends at Gallup, Dan, I know that might be a bad word to say, but they have many, many stats out there about greater profitability, less turnover, higher productivity, all of those things. But our workforce, 92% of our employees agree that we operate with strong values, and 92% of our employees are also proud to work for us. They say we have meaningful work. So that's validating in that we are walking the walk, right? We're not just saying the words. We don't just have a nice mission on our website that maybe looks or sounds good, but we're actually doing the work behind closed doors. And I always say that that's what's important. What does it look and feel like behind closed doors? And I think that our survey proves that. But then beyond that, this top workplace recognition gives each and every one of our employees the opportunity of ownership of our culture, because HR is not the culture owner. Yes, we facilitate culture. Yes, we will help drive culture, but we don't own it. Every single employee in our organization is a steward of our culture, and they own it from day one. And we like to talk about that. We like to instill that and say, you're responsible for your culture. What do you want it to feel like? What do you want it to look like? And I think this recognition is their award to say, you did it, and this is yours to be proud of.
So beautifully and perfectly said. So thank you for sharing all of that. We know that there's many HR leaders listening on this call. And so I think reiterate that point, how the culture is owned by every employee. When you hear it sort of being passed off as an HR responsibility, you know that there's a broader mindset shift that needs to happen with the organization, right? And I think sort of bridging maybe that into getting back to your role as an HR leader, that kind of relates, which is that I think one of the many challenges of HR leadership is that balance of working on the more strategic parts of facilitating the culture for the team. But also there are a significant amount of operational and administrative challenges and tasks that need to get done. So can you just maybe talk a little bit about how you've figured out how to balance that over the journey with ACE?
This was one of the more difficult ones in that it was never either or. It was always about how do we do both at the same time. And I think that also goes back to answering your question earlier, Luke, as well, in that it, if we can, in all that we build and all that we continue to do, if we can talk about building out, continue to build our operations out while maintaining and building and enhancing our culture, that's the secret sauce. To me, that's what's going to continue to sustain us. And so for us, it really is at the leadership level, because as you know, that old saying that people don't leave organizations, they leave their leaders, right? And so we have formal leadership training programs, we have formal leadership opportunities, we have succession planning, we have a lot of things built into what we would call leadership fundamentals to hopefully give our leaders the tools to not only be successful with what they're doing, but to give their teams opportunities to be successful as well. Because if we do that, then that's really what's going to help continue to build and cultivate the culture that everybody wants and feels. And so that's how we get both, and we don't have to do either or. And that's what's really, really important to me as we continue on this journey, because for us, we're still growing. We're still growing, upwards of a 20% clip year over year. So, it's not stopping. And so we have to continually be focused and intentional on this. It's not perfect. It'll never be perfect. We have to own where we need to improve, but we have the commitment to do so. And we also have the commitment to say, we kind of fell on our face here. What do we need to do better? And how do we do that? And let's do it together.
You've talked about this commitment and deep commitment to accessibility of education and debt-free education, the mission of what ACE is doing for students. One of the maybe connection points between Energage and ACE and why we work so well together is that we are both B corporations, and I know Luke and the team are on the path as well. And I guess for those listening who aren't as familiar with the B Corporation movement, and it's actually interesting, just a side note, that one of the three founders of the B Corp movement, a guy named Andy Kassoy, Kassoy, recently passed away. And so there's been just some really extraordinary reflections and write-ups of now the 10,000 B corporations in the world, and kind of what drove this interest in really just a different way of operating a business, and saying that you can actually hold an intense focus on financial success and profitability and growth while having a purpose and a consideration for people and social impact and environmental impact and all these things. And so for ACE, and you've commented on this already, but I'd love to maybe just go a little bit deeper about how you all have really woven that, that deep purpose and mission into your work and your culture organizationally.
Yeah, I think for us, it's just part of our DNA.
Yeah.
As I mentioned at the top of the conversation, from our inception, we were created to serve those who serve. So we were created initially to have programs for teachers, because if you think of a teacher's salary, and I can speak from experience because I'm a former teacher, a teacher going back to school and getting their master's degree or their doctorate degree, they're almost never going to earn the cost of that degree back in their salary. Why is that degree so expensive? There's no need for that. And I challenge any college and university out there to ask themselves why. There's no need. And so from the inception, we were created to provide that degree, that master's degree, that doctorate degree at a price point where they could pay as they go and it still be quality. And so we don't take federal funding from the government, meaning our students don't have student loans. Now, if students do need financial aid, or if they need to have financial assistance throughout their program, there are third parties that will assist them in doing so. But by and large, they don't need it because our price point is as such. And by the way, we haven't increased our tuition since 2016. And we're committed to doing that because the cost of higher education right now is far too expensive. Our teachers, our nurses, our leaders need to be able to get higher degrees at a price point where they will earn it back in their salary. But our mission, and being a mission-driven organization, really is part of our DNA. And, from the beginning, it's how do we continue to serve those who serve others? And we have that mindset in everything that we do. And I think we've done many interviews. We've asked people along their employee experience journey, what's your favorite thing about working for ACE? And by and large, their response is the people, the mission, the giving back, all of those things. And so when you have a mission that resonates so deeply with your employees, what do we know as business leaders is going to be the result? It's going to be more success. And so, being a mission-driven business, it really isn't about what you mentioned, Dan. It isn't really just about the bottom line. It's about the double bottom line, the triple bottom line, and everything that comes along with it. And how do you make that happen? You need people to make that happen. And you need people that care about your mission, that care about what you're doing, that care about how you're doing it, and what that end result is. And then I'll talk about this because it's coming up at the end of the month. It's the reason, it's the why behind what we do. And that's commencement for us. We get one day a year where we get to watch our students walk across the stage and get their degrees, or they get to be hooded because they've earned their doctorate. And for those of us who get to attend that ceremony and watch that happen, it is such a moving day, and we work for that day every single day of the year because inevitably somebody's little daughter or son is in the audience and says, "That's my mom." Or somebody's spouse is in the audience and says, "Yeah, honey, go." Because every one of these students are working adults. They've worked full time. They've gotten this degree at night, on Saturdays, on Sundays. They've missed school ball games, or they've had their laptop in the bleachers. What they have sacrificed while getting this degree. And we know what it means for them to have done what they did. But the ripple effect of what they've accomplished goes far beyond just getting a piece of paper and walking across the stage. That child just saw their parent follow through on a commitment and better the lives of whoever it is that they're serving, but also better the lives of that family. We have seen first-generation students not only finish their bachelor's with us, come back and get a master's, come back and get a doctorate. Can you imagine the generational impact of that? That's the mission that every one of us here at ACE is bought into and that we want to carry on.
I feel like we should almost finish there because that is strong. I'm going to ask you one more question because I made a promise to the last person that was on the podcast. I'm going to skip the others that you may have seen and just go to this one because I feel like it is quite relevant actually to what you've just said, because I completely understand the culture that you have built now through these conversations, and it's recognized by Energage and the top workplaces recognition activities. But the world is worlding at the minute and there's a lot going on. And I would be really keen to get an understanding and answer to this question, which came from the last guest, which is, in the current socio-economic climate, there's a lot of noise out there and it is almost unrelenting every day. How do you feel that impacts your ability to drive change in your culture?
Yeah. Some days it feels very daunting. We can't deny that. But at the end of the day, the question that we come back to and we ask ourselves is, does this have to do with the work that we're doing? And if the answer is no, then that's all it is. To your point, Luke, it's noise. And so we have an opportunity to become part of the noise or to tune it out. And we unequivocally tune it out because we never want to become part of the noise. And so we focus on the job, we focus on our students, we focus on our people, and that's what's going to continue to get us to where we need to go and focus on our culture and our people. The thing about that, we went through this with COVID. It's not just the environment that we're in today, albeit it's different, but it's the same. It's noise, and it's loud, it's heavy, and it's everywhere you go. But at the end of the day, what we focused on was, what is it that we need to do today? What is it that we need to do this hour? What is it that we need to do to get us through whatever it is that we're working on? And sometimes people told us, I come to work to get away from that. It's my focus away from all of that. And it's a little bit of a compliment, if you ask me.
True that.
So,
Very, very true. I'm going to try and squeeze in quick fire questions. You ready for this?
Yep. Okay.
It's going to go quick. Right. Proudest moment in your journey at ACE?
Watching other people get promoted.
Yes, I love those two. Hardest moment that taught you the most?
Letting go.
The book, author, or thinker that shaped your approach the most to culture or leadership?
Honestly, it's the everyday people I get to work with every day. We all love, the Brene Browns, the John C. Maxwell's, the Patrick Lencioni. Like they're there and they're constant. But the people that truly shape me are my everyday people.
Good answer. One piece of advice that you would give to an aspiring top workplace?
You have to start somewhere. And I think a great place to start is, the B Corp assessment. Not that you have to be a B Corp, but it is a really great toolkit.
Cool. And then very last question is, what's the one question you would love to ask the next guest on the podcast when it comes to driving culture change?
Yes. What's one moment when you realized that culture wasn't just something to manage, but something to co-create with your people?
Okay, that's a strong one.
Love it.
So
Great.
KK, thank you. Thank you ever so much for your time. This has been really, really fun. It's a great mission that the organization stands for, and it's a great journey that you've been on. I can't wait to see where that one ends, actually, because it seems like you're continuing to do great things. So thank you for joining me and Dan, and we really appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
If you found today's conversation valuable, we'd love if you follow us, rate us, or review the show. It really helps others find us. And if you're feeling inspired, share this episode with someone who's passionate about building a better workplace. We'll be back soon with more stories from people leaders putting culture into action. See you again next time.